Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working as a research coordinator at one of the biggest hospitals in our city for the past 3 years. My job involves managing drug studies and making sure everything runs smoothly between different departments. It's not an easy job, especially when you have to deal with people who think rules don't apply to them. The pharmacy department at our hospital was notorious. They had this strict policy of closing at 4:30 p.m. sharp, no exceptions. Now, I get it. Everyone wants to leave work on time. But when you're working in healthcare, especially with research patients, sometimes you need to be flexible. I often stayed an hour or two past my shift to finish up paperwork or handle emergencies. That's just part of the job. Last winter, we got news of a massive blizzard heading our way. Being essential workers, this was before that term became popular. We all had to come in no matter what. Most of us accepted it, but the pharmacy staff were clearly not happy about it. That afternoon, we had a patient scheduled for his regular treatment. Usually, patients get their doctor's appointment and treatment on the same day, but this guy preferred splitting it up because of his work schedule. He'd have his checkup in the afternoon and come back the next morning for treatment. Not ideal, but we made it work. At 3:30 p.m., just an hour before their precious closing time, I got a Slack message from one of the pharmacy staff. They wanted to know if there was any possibility of doing the patient's treatment today instead of tomorrow, claiming they were trying to avoid coming in during the blizzard. I couldn't believe they were asking this now, after having this on their schedule all day. Still, I went to ask the patient. I apologized for the short notice and asked if he could get his treatment today instead of tomorrow morning. He wasn't happy about it, but reluctantly agreed that he could do it if he had to. I relayed this to the pharmacy, and that's when things got interesting. They immediately asked about the patient's status and told me that they needed the signed order by 4 p.m. to have enough time to prep the drugs, emphasizing they needed at least 20 minutes for preparation. Now, getting a drug order processed involves multiple steps. Getting a doctor's signature after they've cleared the patient, walking across the street to the pharmacy, handing over the prescription, waiting for the drug to be prepared, and then walking it back to the patient. There was no way this was happening in the next 12 minutes. At 4:01 p.m., I got another message from them. They rudely told me that if I didn't bring the signed order to a pharmacist by 4:05, they couldn't help the patient. They also added that in the future, I should get these orders signed and handed over ahead of time so they could prep them. This was where they messed up. They were basically asking me to get drugs prepared before a doctor had cleared the patient, which was completely against protocol and potentially illegal. The pharmacy director had specifically warned us never to do this during my training. Well, they wanted to play with rules. I decided to follow their words exactly. I got the doctor to sign the order. They didn't really care. But instead of taking it to the pharmacy staff, I went straight to the pharmacy director's office. She was technically a pharmacist too, right? When I explained to the director that the pharmacy staff had requested we prep the patient's medication before they'd been cleared, just so they wouldn't have to come in during tomorrow's blizzard, she looked confused. She asked if the patient had rescheduled, and I explained that no, the staff just didn't want to come in tomorrow. When I showed her the Slack messages, her face turned red as she read them. The director was furious and stated that someone would have to stay late to handle this properly. When we went to the pharmacy, surprise, surprise, everyone had already left. The director and I ended up preparing the medication ourselves at 4:35 p.m. A week later, the patient called saying he actually preferred the afternoon appointments and wanted to keep that schedule. When I mentioned this to the pharmacy director, she said she'd handle it. A few days later, we all got an email announcing new pharmacy hours. They'd now be open until 5:30 p.m., with staff rotating to cover the late shift. Since there were only 3 pharmacists and they were all salaried, this meant some hefty schedule changes for them. The next time I went to pick up medication around 4:45 p.m., guess who was working? The same staff member who'd tried to bend the rules. She bitterly told me that she had to work 3 late shifts a week now. She practically threw the medication at me and slammed the window shut. All this because they couldn't handle coming in for one snowy day. The blizzard ended up being much milder than predicted anyway. Their attempt to avoid one uncomfortable day at work led to months of extended hours. I've been working at Mendy's for a few years now, managing 2 locations, one on Wriggle Road and one in the downtown area. The downtown store is where I'm headed permanently, which is great because the Wriggle Road location has been nothing but trouble since day one. The staff turnover there is insane, and getting people to show up for their shifts is like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. I actually started my management training at the Wriggle Road location, and let me tell you, it was a baptism by fire. That place taught me everything about how not to run a fast food restaurant. Every time I covered shifts at the downtown location, I couldn't help but share horror stories from Wriggle Road. The other staff probably got sick of hearing them, but sometimes you just need to vent, you know? Last night was supposed to be my final shift at Wriggle Road before moving to downtown permanently. I should have known it wouldn't be a quiet goodbye. That place just loves to keep things interesting until the very end. I was there by myself, which wasn't unusual for Wriggle Road. 4 employees were scheduled, but surprise, surprise, none of them showed up. I'd already cleaned everything twice, just trying to kill time while waiting to see if anyone would grace us with their presence. Finally, the general manager gave me the green light to shut the place down for the night. I was in the middle of my closing routine, washing dishes, mopping floors, cleaning the fryers, when I heard that dreaded beep from the drive-through speaker. A woman's voice came through demanding to speak with a manager immediately. I explained that we were closed and she would need to return tomorrow. The customer wasn't having any of it. She started ranting, repeatedly demanding that I take her order, make her order, give her order, replace her order, and fix her order. I let her continue her tirade while I focused on cleaning. After a moment of silence, she called out again, asking if anyone was listening to her. I repeated that we were closed and I was the only person there, so I couldn't serve her. That's when she escalated things, threatening to call the police if I wouldn't deal with her complaint. At that point, I just took off my headset. I could still see her car sitting in the drive-thru through the window, but I focused on finishing my closing tasks. The woman was now honking her horn and flashing her lights like she was trying to signal aliens. About 10 minutes later, the store phone rang. It was the county police department calling about reported issues at our location. I explained the situation to the officer, that I was the manager closing alone, we were closed, and there was a belligerent customer refusing to leave the drive-thru who had threatened to call the police when I wouldn't serve her. The officer asked if she was still there, and I confirmed that both she and her friend were still sitting in the drive-thru. They said they'd send some units over and asked if I wanted to be contacted upon their arrival, but I declined, explaining that I could see everything from inside. I kept cleaning while watching through the window as 3 patrol cars pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. The officers approached the car and I could see them trying to reason with the women. The driver, the one who'd been yelling at me, started getting aggressive with the officers. Bad move. Next thing I knew, they had her in handcuffs while her friend stood there looking mortified. Turned out the driver had an outstanding warrant, and her attitude with the police didn't help her case. The friend didn't have a license to drive the car home, so she had to call for a ride. I finished up my last tasks, grabbed my skateboard from the office, and rolled out through the parking lot past the police cars. When I passed by, I could hear the handcuffed woman screaming that this was all my fault while her friend was desperately trying to get an Uber on her phone. As I skated away, the woman was still shouting threats about calling corporate, but one of the officers shut her down by telling her the only call she'd be making would be to her lawyer. I couldn't have scripted a better ending to my time at Wriggle Road. Tomorrow I start full-time at the downtown location, where the staff actually shows up and the customers are slightly less likely to get arrested in the drive-thru. Though I have to admit, it'll make for a much less interesting story to tell. I had just moved to this neighborhood a month ago after landing a job at a local tech startup. The move was perfect. Everything I needed was within walking distance, including this amazing pizza place just 5 minutes away. Their margarita pizza reminded me of the ones my grandmother used to make when I was a kid, which instantly made it my go-to spot for dinner after long days at work. It was a Friday evening and I had just finished an exhausting week of debugging code. All I wanted was to grab a pizza and relax at home with some Netflix. Since the place was so close, I figured I'd just walk in and order instead of calling ahead. When I was waiting to place my order, I noticed a poster advertising their promotion, 10% off for telephone orders. The cashier, this guy was a permanent scowl who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, took my order. I politely asked if I could get the advertised discount even though I hadn't called ahead, explaining that since I was already there, it would save us both some time. The cashier flatly refused, stating it was for telephone orders only. I tried reasoning with him, pointing out that I could just step outside and call right then, which seemed unnecessary, but he just repeated the same response about it being for telephone orders only. His robotic responses and complete lack of common sense were getting on my nerves. I walked out, ready to take my business elsewhere, when I had an idea. I stepped outside, pulled out my phone, and dialed the number displayed on their door. When he answered, I cheerfully placed my order and mentioned the discount promotion. Through the window, I could see him recognize my voice. I smiled and waved at him. His face turned a shade redder, but he had to honor the discount now. He grudgingly told me the order would be ready in 10 minutes. While waiting outside, I noticed another customer approaching. A woman juggling her work bag and phone, looking like she'd had an equally long day. I asked if she was getting pizza and whether she knew about the discount. When she said she didn't, I offered to help her out. I dialed the number again, maintaining direct eye contact with the cashier through the window. His face was something else when he heard my voice for the third time. I cheerfully greeted him again and explained that my friend wanted to order with the telephone discount. The cashier looked like he was about to explode, but he had to take the order. He created this situation with his own inflexibility. The woman got her discounted pizza, and we shared a laugh about the absurdity of the situation. She even took my number, saying she'd call me next time she wanted pizza with a discount. Word spread quickly around the neighborhood about the phone discount loophole. Within a week, the pizza place changed their policy. The 10% discount was now automatically applied to all takeaway orders if you had their menu, which was conveniently stacked right by the entrance. The grumpy cashier was moved to the kitchen away from customer service. He's much happier now making pizzas than dealing with difficult customers like me. My older cousin has this cat who's basically a tiny bowl of Furry. I spend a lot of time at their house because I love animals and want to learn how to take care of them properly before getting my own pet. Plus, my cousin and I have always been really close. The cat, despite being a complete menace to literally everyone else, actually likes me because I help with feeding her and cleaning her litter box. This cat is seriously not your typical friendly house pet. She's more like a miniature tiger with anger management issues. The only people she tolerates are my cousin and me, and even then, you better not mess with her when she's sleeping. Everyone in our family knows this, and we've all learned to respect her space the hard way. So this whole mess started during a family gathering at my aunt and uncle's place. They had invited some of their close friends over, including this couple with two absolute terrors for children. The kids were around 5 and 6 years old, but they acted like they were raised by wolves. Their parents were those typical, my precious angels can do no wrong type of people. I tried telling their parents about how their kids were running around breaking things and asked if they could please watch them. Their dad just brushed it off, saying they were just being kids and didn't know any better. When I pointed out that they had just knocked over an expensive vase, their mom simply dismissed it, saying that kids will be kids and they were just exploring. While these mini demons were terrorizing everyone downstairs, I escaped to my cousin's room upstairs with her and her friend. We were just hanging out, and then my cousin and her friend decided to go buy some new cat toys since the old ones were completely destroyed. This left me alone in the room with the sleeping cat on the bed. I heard the thunder of tiny feet coming up the stairs, and I knew exactly what was about to happen. These two kids burst into the room and immediately started pointing at all the Nintendo posters on the walls. Then they spotted the cat. The older one excitedly shouted about seeing a fluffy kitty on the bed. I quickly told them not to touch her because she was sleeping. The younger one started whining about how much they loved cats and wanted to pet the kitty. I tried warning them that this cat doesn't like being woken up and would scratch them. They just accused me of being mean and insisted they wanted to play with the cat. They ran downstairs to their parents, and of course the parents came marching up. Their mom demanded that I let them pet the cat, arguing that it wasn't even my pet, it was just a regular house cat. I tried explaining that this cat was different and got really aggressive, but their dad cut me off and told me to stop being difficult, saying they were just children who wanted to pet a cat. That's when I got an idea. A wonderfully awful idea. I pretended to give in and told them they were right, encouraging the kids to go ahead and pet the cat while she was sleeping. The kids ran into the room while I stayed in the doorway, counting down in my head. 5 seconds passed with excited whispers and giggles. Then it happened. The sounds of fabric ripping and children screaming filled the air. Both kids came running out crying. The older one with a huge scratch down his arm, and the younger one's pretty pink shirt in shreds, with scratches all over her arms. Their parents were livid. The mom started yelling about how I dared to let that monster attack their children. The dad threatened to report the dangerous animal. I was about to respond when everyone went quiet. There, at the top of the darkened staircase, stood the cat. Her eyes were glowing in the darkness, ears flat against her head, and tail puffed up like a bottle brush. She looked like something straight out of a horror movie. The dad, probably thinking he needed to prove something, started stomping up the stairs while glaring at the cat. I tried warning him that it wasn't a good idea, but he ignored me. Big mistake. The cat launched herself from the top of the stairs like some kind of furry missile, landed right on his back and shredded his expensive dress shirt. She then walked back upstairs like nothing happened, probably to continue her interrupted nap. While all this was happening, their mom was recording everything on her phone, probably planning to use it as evidence to report the cat. Instead, it captured her husband getting his butt handed to him by a house cat. The video went viral in our family group chat. They left pretty quickly after that, the dad's shirt in tatters and their kids still crying. My aunt and uncle couldn't stop laughing once they left, and when my cousin got back and heard the story, she gave the cat extra treats for dinner. A week later, we found out the mom had tried to share the video on social media to complain about the dangerous animal, but it completely backfired. Everyone in the comments was roasting them for ignoring multiple warnings and letting their kids harass a sleeping animal. The video got taken down pretty quickly after that. Now whenever anyone new comes over, my cousin just shows them that video as a warning about respecting the cat's space. Works every time. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.